Hey, Truth Seekers, welcome back. I want to talk about the Ozo, Washington mudslide of March 22nd, 2014. I live in Washington State, not far from where this event occurred. And just recently, not far from where I live, a new billboard went up that says Ozo Strong, just like this. And right away from the moment this happened, it happened on March 22nd, which immediately stood out to me. But then also knowing gematria, once I applied the gematria to this town, there was something very curious. In simple English gematria, the town is 15 for O, 19 for S, 15 for O, added up 49. Washington with Pythagorean gematria also sums to 49. I thought, that's interesting. 49, 49 on March 22nd. And it wasn't long after that this phrase came out. It's just recently the billboard went up by my house, but I've heard this phrase throughout the year, and it's kind of like that Boston Strong after the Boston Marathon. Boston has a 3-2-2 connection. We'll get into that. But Ozo Strong, the word strong has a simple English gematria of 93, like the number from Thelema. And when you add 49 plus 93, you get the number 142. Washington's the 42nd state. If you write out 42 and sum it with simple English gematria, it sums to 142. And, I don't think this stuff's a coincidence. I think it's just part of how it's all so well thought out. Interestingly enough, the phrase mudslide has a Pythagorean gematria of 33, but with the S exception, it's 42. Landslide's 35 with the S exception 44. This Ozo, there was a report that came out in 1999 stating how unsafe the region was and how vulnerable it was to this type of event. And the person who wrote that report was named Daniel Miller. And of course, Miller is one of these names with the 33 gematria. And this report foreshadowed exactly what happened. So what happened was, by no surprise to that report, which was written years earlier. And just wanted to point out those curiosities right there. Also, Truth Seeker, just a little bit more about this number 322. It goes to authority. Here's this quote from Colossians: "Slaves, obey your masters." And in our nation, some of the authority we have is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And if you look up the numerology of their dates, it was originally just the Bureau of Investigation, established July 26th, 1908. 7 plus 26 is 33. But if you do 7 plus 2 plus 6 plus 1 plus 9 plus 0 plus 8, the date numerology of that date's also 33. So that's a date with a double 33 numerology encoding. Then later it was reestablished as the FBI on March 22nd, 322, 1935. And again, Yale's that skull and bones number. Besides that, it's been very shaping in our nation's history. You could say March 22nd was the original September 11th. That's the date of the Jamestown Massacre, where it was blamed on Native Americans. Out of that came this first concept of being Virginianers, an identity separate from Britain. It was the first independent identity. It came out of this tragedy. Also out of this tragedy, the Jamestown Massacre, came literature about a movement against the native populations. Before this, animosity towards the natives didn't exist, but after this attack was blamed on them, there was suddenly a movement to essentially exterminate the local natives. So this tragedy brought about this new identity and this movement against the native population. Later in history, the UK would pass the Stamp Act, which gave way to the Boston Tea Party and the American Revolution. That was the 322 Boston connection. More recently, Obamacare passed on March 22nd at Universal Time. It was a rare Sunday night vote. Here in the United States, it was March 21st, but universal time, it was March 22nd for the Obamacare bill. And yeah, just a little bit more about that 322. And when I think about Washington, I think about Mount Rainier the most. I also think about Mount St. Helens, which already recently erupted. And if you get to Mount St. Helens, you have to take exit 49 off of Interstate 5, the major freeway that runs down the west coast. But Mount Rainier, which is further north and closer to Seattle, the last time it erupted, the mud flows from that went over what is, South Seattle today, Tacoma, all the stuff in between. If it erupted again, those regions could be in a lot of trouble. And perhaps this Oso, what happened there is a warning for a greater slide from Mount Rainier. I went to college at Arizona State University, and my professor there, he told us in that class the one city we should never live in is Seattle because we might live to see it destroyed by Mount Rainier. And that remains to be seen. But let's just check this out. Let's watch the video of Oso, a little bit of this. I want you to see how massive this piece of land is that disappeared.
Oh, yeah, man, I got a big emergency. There is a house on 530 and a big slide, and it is covering the road at the bottom of Scaglin Hill.
Emergency.
There's like a mudslide and everything's gone. The houses are gone. What?
Is there any injuries?
Oh, there's a propane. There's a propane leak. You could.
There's a propane leak? What's the address there?
No, there's a freaking mudslide. I mean, all I see is dirt now. We watched hundreds of trees come falling.
Is there any...
And it's no longer. I'm on Steve Post Road on Highway 530. There's not even a house here anymore.
Are there any injuries?
Yes, there's people yelling for help. What happened? Can you tell us what happened?
It looks like we had a mudslide in the area, but we do have the fire department dispatched out there, okay?
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
It stopped at 100 feet from my house.
Okay, well, they have been advised, okay?
Thank you.
911, what's the emergency?
There's been a massive landslide on Highway 530.
Yes, we're responding to it right now. Do you have any details on
it's
injuries?
taken.
Are people having issues at all?
I do. That's what I'm calling. My neighbor's house and their neighbor's house has been completely taken out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's collapsed on several of them, and they're trapped.
True Seeker, I just want to point out that Snohomish County sums to 74 with Pythagorean gematria. If you do the gematria of many of the towns in Snohomish County, they also sum to 74. It's a very Masonic area. Snohomish itself, with the S exceptions, sums to 66. Anyhow, look at this area on the screen. This is what gave way in the March 22nd landslide. This is a massive chunk of land. And what I ask you, True Seeker, is if you think Mother Nature is really responsible for this, or if this was planned and plotted by man. What I say to you is the time that Daniel Miller report was written, possibly something was done to rig this for a future event. And when March 22nd, 2014 rolled around, that might very well have been the day. It's just massive. Mother Nature, huh? Just seems strange it would give out in this pattern, but the rest of the land around it, I don't know. 322. Awfully suspicious. And we live in suspicious times. You know, that's how these questions come about in the first place, because we live in such suspicious times. If we lived in a more sane world, we wouldn't have to sit here and look at these things and ask ourselves this. But the reason we do is so we can be prepared and understand what's going on. We might have to deal with something like this one day. So that's why it's better to be aware. All right, until next time, True Seeker.